Hi everybody, I am Rakesh and I am a passionate aeronautical engineer who dares to dream beyond imaginations. Last week when we cherished the arrival of Dassault Rafale aircrafts in India, little did we know that a tragic incident was about to happen. Yes, flight number IX1344 flying from Dubai to Calicut crashed and we lost 18 beautiful lives. My heartfelt condolences are with the family of the bereaved ones. So, this video is intended to understand, analyze and find what went wrong that led to this catastrophe. This video is out of sheer passion and curiosity. Through this video, I would like to share with you all my personal findings and assumptions on what went wrong that led to this tragic incident. So, to start with, there are lots of media speculations about what went wrong. There have been reports coming out stating that the pilot overshot, then the aircraft skidded off the runway and crashed into the valley. So the runway is a long strip where the aircraft comes and lands. So every runway will have two headings or two numbers written on both ends of it, and it is equally symmetrical. When I mean symmetrical, it can be divided into two equal halves. Both sides the aircraft can take off and land. So we have heard from the media that the pilot tried to land from 28 first, then aborted the landing, asked for a go around, then came back via runway 10. So what exactly is this? These are all pure technical terms. Let me show you a mock of a runway that I have prepared for illustration purpose. My request to my viewers is that don't get misguided by this mock runway, because due to space constraint I couldn't recreate the same stuff on the other end. So the point I'm trying to make is every runway is symmetrical. When I mean symmetrical, over the lengthwise as well as the widthwise. If you cut the runway into two pieces, let's say lengthwise, the center line will divide the runway into two equal halves. So what all markings you can see, white markings you can see on one side, you can see it on the other side as well at the same distance. Similarly, if this is, let us assume that this total distance is 4000 meters or 4 kilometers, and this is the center line, the 2 kilometers. So what all lines you can see over here, what all markings you can see over here, the same thing will be reciprocated on the other side. The only difference being the runway heading. The runway starts with 8 equally spaced white stripes. This is called the threshold. On the other side of the runway, other end of the runway basically, you can see the same 8 stripes, which is again the threshold on the other side. So the distance between these two thresholds is the usable area of the runway, which the aircraft can use for taking and landing. Now let's come to the other half of it. Ahead of the threshold, we have 3 continuous white stripes, which is wider than the threshold markings, which is called the touchdown zone. In front of that, we have even wider stripes, which is called the aiming point. The distance between the touchdown zone and the aiming point is where the aircraft is supposed to touch down first on the runway. If it shoots beyond this particular point, then that condition is called overshooting. If it touches down behind this line, then that is called undershooting. So the disadvantage of overshooting and undershooting, I'll tell you. If the aircraft overshoots, there will be very less area for the aircraft to roll and stop. Because the aircraft is landing at huge momentum, it won't be able to stop at a particular distance. Let me explain you the undershooting and overshooting scenarios with the help of an illustration. On a gradual steady descent, this is where an aircraft is supposed to touch. The distance between the aiming point and the touchdown zone is a perfect landing. So the aircraft will decelerate and go for taxiing. But there will be scenarios when the aircraft comes due to many factors won't be able to touch down on the touchdown zone, crosses that, and beyond this mark, it goes and touches down. The problem with this particular scenario is called overshooting. The problem with overshooting is the remaining portion of the runway won't be able to stop the aircraft, or else the remaining portion is not enough for the aircraft to decelerate and stop. Undershooting is a scenario when the aircraft touches well ahead of the demarcated touchdown zone. That means somewhere over here. So this is this demarcated touchdown zone. It touches way ahead of that one, leading to a problem. What is that problem? The problem is, in certain cases, the pilot won't be able to take the aircraft to the usable area of the runway, that is beyond the threshold. It may land somewhere ahead of the threshold, leading to a mishap. Having understood the runway markings, now let me explain you the significance of these numbers placed on each end of the runway, which is called the runway heading. The way we need navigation for while driving or riding, aircraft also needs some kind of navigation to understand the position of the runway. This is where the significance of these two numbers comes. In order to understand the runway headings, let's take the help of a compass. And as you know, compass is always used for finding the directions. So let me place some markings on the runway based on the compass. So here the east direction comes, here the north, here the south, and the west. So this is how our mock runway looks like. Now if you focus on my compass, it shows 100 degrees. Now let's focus on the number here. It's 10. So what is the significance? The significance is, in aviation, we always remove 10 out of the particular heading and say it as 10. Now let me show you another significance like this. See, it is 280 degrees. So here you see it is 28. So we have removed the last 0 out of the 3 digits and we are seeing it as 28. Now this is a very interesting concept. Why? Because whenever the pilot says I want to use runway 28, then that means the nose of the aircraft wants to move towards 28. And when I say I want to use runway 10 or I want to move towards 100 degrees, that means the nose of the aircraft wants to move towards 100. That's the reason it has been placed in opposite direction. The runway heading is based on the orientation of the aircraft. Now let me show you something very interesting. As per the compass directions, 100 degree or 10 in aviation terms should have been placed on the east, and 280 degrees or 28 should have been placed on the west. But I have placed it wrong. No, the placements are not wrong. I'll explain you why. So the runway headings are always marked based on the orientation of the aircraft nose. So when the pilot says he wants to take runway 28, that means it basically says that he wants to move towards 28 direction, or that means the west direction. He wants to move from east to the west direction. Similarly, when the pilot says he wants to take the runway 10, then basically that means he wants to fly from west direction to the east direction. So it is basically based on the orientation where the aircraft wants to move. That's the reason it is opposite when compared to the compass directions. Having understood the basics of runway markings and its related terminologies, now let's understand how aircraft landing happens. Landing happens in 5 phases, starting with the base leg, final approach, flaring, touchdown, and after landing roll. Let's see this with the help of an example. Okay, so let's assume that this aircraft is preparing itself for final landing. So the main landing gears are extended, and the pilot starts aligning the aircraft with respect to the center line of the runway. This is where the base leg starts, the phase 1 of landing, the base leg. Here what he does is, he takes a smooth, gradual, coordinated turn in order to align with the center line of the runway. So this turn, this phase, once it turns and this straight phase, to align with the center line, this is called the base leg. This is very important phase in landing. Why? Because the placement of the base leg determines whether the aircraft will overshoot or undershoot, or whether it will be able to carry out a normal landing. In order to achieve a gradual and stabilized descent, the placement of base leg is very important. So under strong wind conditions and flaps down condition, the base leg should be almost closer to the runway as possible. Why? Because strong winds may have a very good resistance and will slow down the aircraft. So it has to be, the base leg has to be close to the runway so that it can go to the final approach and take a normal descent. Whereas when the flaps are in zero condition and winds are not that strong, then it can be a little far away because visibility is going to be good, resistance is less. So the pilot will have enough time to stabilize the aircraft to get it into a descending height. So this is where the importance of placement of base leg is all about. So the end of phase 1, the base leg, and the starting of phase 2, final approach, happens when the nose of the aircraft gets aligned with the center line of the runway. He again takes a gradual coordinated turn. Now the phase 2 starts. The phase 2 starts and there is a gradual descent happening. That means the aircraft starts losing its altitude. Now the airspeed, as the aircraft loses its altitude, airspeed increases and a new factor comes in called the decision height or the minimum descent height. Before this height, or at least at this height, the pilot must have taken a decision whether he is in a position to land normally or a normal approach is possible or not. If he is not confident enough, or if some factors are going against, then he has to abort the takeoff and ask for a go around. As the pilot decides to go for a normal stabilized approach, at almost 15 to 20 feet above the ground, phase 3 or the flaring starts. This is basically a floating motion, and this is characterized by a pitching up moment. The nose of the aircraft gets pitched up. The main reason being that the touchdown has to happen on the main landing gears, because the landing loads are so high that the nose landing gear may not be able to take that much loads and it may collapse. So if the pitch up is too high, what will happen is the aircraft will start bouncing, and that is characterized by a hard landing. Now, if the pitch down moment is very low and the speed of the aircraft or the airspeed is very low, then what will happen is a kind of floating sensation happens, and there are chances that the aircraft may overshoot or lose its landing distance. Both are not advised. Phase 4 starts, the touchdown. Touchdown is a point when the main landing gears touch the runway. So the transition from phase 3 to phase 4, that is from flaring to touchdown, happens in a matter of seconds, wherein a pitch down moment is applied to the aircraft nose. The nose landing gear touches the runway and after landing roll starts. This indicates the end of the landing sequence of the aircraft. So I believe you might have understood the basics of runway markings, its terminologies, and the landing phase of an aircraft. Now let's get into the subject matter of what happened with IX1344. Calicut International Airport has a tabletop runway, which basically means it's on a plateau. It is on top of a terrain which has deep valleys, almost 35 to 40 feet deep, on both ends of the runway and on its sides. So the criticality with this kind of tabletop runways is that in case something wrong happens, there won't be enough space for the aircraft to decelerate and stop. So that's the main problem with tabletop runways. Otherwise, every specifications, every classification markings, everything are one and the same when compared to any other runway. So the Calicut International Airport has a runway length of 2700 meters with runway headings 10 and 28. So beyond the threshold, on both ends, it has 240 meter long runway and safety areas, which is mandatory for all airports to have. Beyond this 240 meter RESA or RESA, there is a deep valley 35 to 40 foot long. So what is the significance of RESA or runway and safety area? The difference between RESA and runway is that runway is paved one, whereas RESA is unpaved. So in case the aircraft jumps the runway or the threshold, then the unpaved area on RESA will be able to dampen the motion of the aircraft and take it to a halt. So it is a kind of mandatory safety requirement in every airport. Having understood the basics, now let's understand and analyze with available information on what might have gone wrong with Air India Express flight IX1344 flying from Dubai to Calicut. As soon as the pilot made contact with Calicut International Airport tower, the ATC asked the pilot to take runway 28 for approach. So as I explained earlier, runway 28 or 280 degrees comes on the west side of the compass. So basically the air traffic controller wanted the aircraft to land from east side towards the west side. There are specific reasons for this. Why? Because the main factor being the wind direction. The direction of the wind at that time at that airport was from west side. So that means the pilot is going to land the aircraft from east side to the west side, and the wind is flowing from west to east. So this is called a condition. This is called headwind. Headwind means the nose of the aircraft gets in contact with the wind first. So there are numerous advantages to this. When the aircraft is approaching for landing, the airspeed is very low and the lift is also low, the power is also low. Since the wind is from the opposite direction of the aircraft, it will help the aircraft stabilize more and generate more lift at slow speed, and hence the pilot can make a steady, good descent, a normal approach he can make. Now let's understand what might have happened the other way around. If the aircraft comes along with the wind, then what will happen is basic logic. The wind will push the aircraft more towards the front, and there are chances that the pilot may overshoot the runway, and for decelerating the aircraft it will be very difficult and it may roll a little longer, or else, put in other words, the runway that is left for landing won't be enough to stop the aircraft. So that is one main disadvantage with tailwinds. But FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, allows tailwind landing also in specified conditions. So what are those conditions? The wind speed, the main one being the wind speed being less than 15 knots. And one more condition is that the runway visibility should be more than 2000 meters. So in Calicut International Airport, both these conditions were met. The wind speed is supposedly around 10 to 12 knots and the visibility was more than 2000 meters. So all this information, all this weather information is available to the pilot as well as the ATC through a standard format called as a META, or the Meteorological Terminal Aviation Report, which gets updated every 59 minutes. As per ATC's instruction, the pilot prepares for an approach from runway 28. So completing the base leg, he starts a landing approach, the final approach, but then requests for a go around. The possible reason why the pilot might have asked for a go around is that it was raining very heavily, and that might have created a kind of optical illusion. That is, it was very difficult for the pilot to understand the runway markings, the aiming point, due to which the pilot might have got confused and he took a wise decision of quitting or aborting the landing and asking for a go around. After the go around, the pilot requested the ATC for using runway 10 for landing, which is basically a tailwind landing condition. And the ATC also accepted the request. Why? Because as per FAA norms, if the wind speed is less than 15 knots and the runway visual range or the visibility of the runway is more than 2000 meters, it is acceptable for tailwind landing. As per information collected from various sources, the pilot started the final approach to runway 10 at a flight level of 3100 feet above mean ground level. Then the information that we get is the aircraft made a touchdown at almost 1000 meters ahead of the threshold. Now what he is left with for after landing roll is just 1.7 kilometers. So if the pilot started descending at 3100 feet, then he should have made it, or he should have touched down at almost near to the touchdown zone. So something wrong happened somewhere in between the touchdown and the final approach. So what I believe might have gone wrong is that since it was raining very heavily, even though we have good precision instruments inside for us to navigate, even now pilots use some kind of visual references for making the final approach. So in this case, there was a kind of optical illusion. Maybe the pilots were unable to distinguish between the different runway markings, due to which he might have played with lots of factors like the aircraft power, the descent rate. I think here the descent rate was very low and the aircraft might be at high power, so that it made an overshoot landing. The aircraft overshot. So after touchdown also, a Boeing 737 aircraft to stop 1.7 kilometers, the remaining area of runway is fair enough to decelerate and stop with the help of spoilers and thrust reversers. Once the touchdown happened and the after landing roll was initiated, I believe one more factor might have come in, which prevented the aircraft from stopping at the mandated distance, and that factor is called the aquaplaning or hydroplaning. Aquaplaning is a condition when the aircraft wheels lose their braking impact or braking effect and directional stability due to the presence of water on the runway surface. It is believed that at that time 1.5 to 2 mm water level was available on the runway. So in hydroplaning, what happens is the water forms a wedge in front of the tire and pushes the tire up on an upward direction. So the aircraft starts floating. The pilot might have lost some golden landing distance due to this floating impact or the skidding impact. I won't say that aquaplaning is the sole reason for the aircraft skidding off the runway, but surely the pilot lost some golden distance because of this. As soon as the pilot understood that he is losing his landing distance, he might have decided to take off again. So he pushes his throttle to full condition so that with full power he can take off again. But by this time, due to this dampening effect, I believe the aircraft was not in a position to take off, and it almost reached the threshold and was about to jump the threshold to the Riza area. So identifying a catastrophe that was about to happen, the pilot might have pulled the throttle back to idle in order to avoid a major accident or a fire breakout. So I believe Riza might have dampened the motion of the aircraft, the momentum of the aircraft, but still, since the throttle had been on full position, it again gained momentum than what was when it landed because of the full throttle. Then again it gained momentum, the Riza dampened it, it came to a screeching halt, but at the end of the valley it was unable to maintain its stability and started falling into the gorge, breaking into two pieces. There is a reason why I believe so, because had the momentum been very high, then it should have overshot the Riza also. It should have crossed the Riza and the perimeter wall of the airport. But that is not the case. If you see the pictures, it's very clear that it is just down the valley. We can see the tail, and near the compound wall we can see the cockpit area. So this will happen only if the momentum was very low, the speed was very low. It is because of the self weight, I believe, that the aircraft started coming down the valley and broke into pieces. After my analysis, I find it really difficult to zero in on one factor that led to this incident. I believe it's the cumulative impact of lots of factors that went wrong that day. There was heavy tailwind and heavy rains, aquaplaning, followed by rubbles and rubber content on the runway, and the approach of and the decision to take off again, accelerating the aircraft. All these cumulatively led to this incident is what I believe. But a big salute to the bravery of those pilots who, after understanding that an incident is about to happen, they idled the engine. They averted a major mishap, otherwise a fire could have broken out and we could have lost more lives. A big salute to them. Unfortunately, they are not with us anymore. May their souls rest in peace. They'll be remembered in my prayers. Before wrapping up this video, let me tell you all that this video is done or attempted out of pure curiosity and is in no way intended to give out any judgments related to this incident. There are experts doing the investigation, but I promise you to come back, follow up the investigation and come back once the final report is out. I know I was conscious throughout this video. Please bear with me, I'm sorry for that, because this is my first attempt on YouTube. I need all your encouragement and support because I'm going to come up with much more interesting stuff for you all in my upcoming videos. So please like, share and subscribe to my channel Dreaming Beyond Imaginations. Thank you. Have a nice day.